I went without so many things. I wore the same clothes for years. I cut my own hair. I never went to the movies or out to dinner. I didn't take vacations. Every dollar I didn't spend on absolute necessities went into that account. For Daniel. Always for Daniel. And he was worth it. God, he was worth every sacrifice. Daniel was a wonderful child. Smart and kind and respectful. He worked hard in school. He got good grades. He helped around the house without being asked. He was patient with me when I was tired and short-tempered. He never complained about not having a father or about our small house or about the things other kids had that we couldn't afford. On my birthday every year, he would make me breakfast in bed. Burnt toast and lumpy scrambled eggs and orange juice in a fancy glass. He would present it to me so proudly, and I would eat every bite and tell him it was delicious. And it was delicious, not because of the food, but because of the love behind it. When he was 16, he got a part-time job at a grocery store. He wanted to help with expenses, he said. He wanted to take some of the burden off me. I told him no. I told him his job was to study and get good grades so he could go to college and have a better life than I did. But he worked anyway, and every week he would try to give me money. I always refused, but I loved him for offering. I loved him so much it hurt sometimes. Daniel graduated high school with honors. I cried at his graduation, watching him walk across that stage in his cap and gown. I thought about all the nights I had cleaned toilets and mopped floors to pay for his books and school supplies. I thought about all the double shifts and the exhaustion and the sacrifice. And I knew it had all been worth it. I worked 2 jobs to give him everything he needed. During the day, I waitressed at a diner downtown. The work was hard and the customers could be difficult, but the tips were decent and I needed every penny. At night, after Daniel went to bed, I cleaned offices in the business district. My mother would come over to stay with Daniel while I worked. She wasn't happy about it. She thought I had somehow driven Michael away, that a better wife would have made him stay. But she watched Daniel anyway, though she reminded me regularly that she was doing me a favor. Those years were exhausting. My feet hurt all the time from standing for hours at the diner. My back ached from scrubbing floors and cleaning bathrooms. I was always tired, always worried about money, always counting pennies and trying to make ends meet. But I never complained. Not to Daniel. I didn't want him to feel like a burden. I didn't want him to carry the weight of our situation. Every morning, I made him breakfast. Pancakes on Sundays, his favorite. I packed his lunch with little notes tucked inside. Have a great day, sweetie. You're going to do amazing on your test. Mommy loves you. I helped him with his homework every evening, even though math was never my strong subject, and by middle school he was learning things I had forgotten years ago. But I sat with him anyway, tried my best, told him I believed in him. I saved every penny I could for his future. I had a jar in my closet where I put my tips. At the end of each month, I would count the money and put it in a savings account for Daniel's education. It wasn't much. Some months it was only $50. Other months, if I had been lucky with tips, maybe $100. But it added up. Slowly, painfully slowly, it added up. My name is Margaret. I'm 62 years old now, though I feel much older sometimes. I live alone in a small house on Maple Street, the same house where I raised my son, Daniel. His father left when Daniel was only 3 years old. Just walked out one morning and never came back. No explanation. No apology. Just gone. I remember that morning like it was yesterday. It was a Thursday in early spring. Daniel had just turned 3 the week before. I was in the kitchen making breakfast when Michael came down the stairs with a duffel bag. He looked at me with cold eyes and said he couldn't do this anymore. The marriage. The responsibility. Fatherhood. He said he felt like he was drowning and needed to leave before he lost himself completely. I begged him to stay. Not for me, but for Daniel. Our little boy who loved him so much. Who waited by the window every evening for Daddy to come home from work. Who saved his best drawings to show him. But Michael just shook his head and walked out the door. Got in his truck and drove away. That was the last time I ever saw him. He sent a few $100s in the first couple of months. Then nothing. I heard through friends that he moved to another state. Started over. Maybe even had another family. He never called. Never wrote. Never asked about Daniel. It was like we simply stopped existing for him. So it was just Daniel and me. For 25 years, it was just us against the world. I still remember the exact moment everything changed. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late autumn. The leaves outside were turning gold and red, falling slowly to the ground like tiny pieces of my breaking heart. I was standing in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I had baked birthday cakes for my son every year since he was born. And my daughter-in-law, Rebecca, was sitting at my table, looking at me with eyes that held no warmth. She said something that day that I will never forget. She said, "You've been in our lives long enough, Mom. It's time you step back now." I didn't cry. Not then. I just stood there, holding a dish towel in my hands, squeezing it tight like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. I nodded. I smiled even. Because that's what mothers do, isn't it? We smile even when our hearts are breaking. We nod even when we want to scream. We step back even when every part of us wants to hold on tighter. But that moment, that Tuesday afternoon, wasn't really when it all began. The truth is, things had been changing for a long time. I just didn't want to see it. Or maybe I saw it and pretended I didn't. Because admitting that I was losing my son, the boy I raised alone, the man I sacrificed everything for, was too painful to accept. Let me tell you my story. Not because I want sympathy. Not because I'm bitter. But because maybe, just maybe, there's another mother out there who feels what I felt. Who sees what I saw. Who needs to know she's not alone in this quiet, invisible grief. Maybe Rebecca was right about some things. Not about pushing me out completely. Not about making me feel like I wasn't family. But about me needing to find my own life again. I started slowly. I joined a book club at the local library. I started volunteering at a community garden. I reconnected with an old friend from my waitressing days, and we started having coffee once a week. I didn't call Daniel every Sunday anymore. I sent a text instead, something simple. "Hope you're all well. Thinking of you." Sometimes he responded. Sometimes he didn't. For Emma's second birthday, I wasn't invited to the party. But I sent a gift in the mail, a beautiful children's book with a note inside. To Emma, with all my love. Grandma. I didn't know if she would ever read it. If she would even know who I was. But I sent it anyway, because that's what love does. It keeps giving, even when it gets nothing back. Months passed. Then a year. I heard from Daniel occasionally. Brief calls. Short texts. He told me Emma was talking now. Walking. Growing so fast. He sent photos sometimes. I saved every one. I miss them. God, I miss them with an ache that never quite went away. But I also discovered something surprising. I missed myself too. The self I had been before I became only Daniel's mother. The woman who had dreams and interests and value beyond her role as a parent. I started painting, something I had loved as a girl but had given up decades ago. I wasn't very good, but it didn't matter. I painted anyway. Gardens and sunsets and abstract swirls of color that represented feelings I couldn't name. I made new friends. Real friends who knew me as Margaret, not as someone's mother or someone's anything. Just Margaret. And slowly, very slowly, I started to heal. I stood up slowly. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself to stay steady. "Daniel," I said one more time. "Is this what you want?" He looked up at me, and I saw pain in his eyes. Real pain. But then he looked at Rebecca, at his wife, at the woman he had chosen to build his life with, and he nodded. "I think some space might be good, Mom. Just for a while. Just until things calm down." I picked up my purse and walked to the door. I didn't cry. Not then. I held my head high and walked out of that house with whatever dignity I had left. I drove home. I walked into my empty house. I sat down at my kitchen table, the same table where I had served Daniel breakfast every morning for 18 years. And then, finally, I let myself cry. I cried for hours. For days, really. I cried for the son I had lost, for the relationship that had been taken from me, for the grandmother I would never get to be, for all the sacrifices I had made that seemed to mean nothing in the end. But somewhere in all that crying, something else began to grow. Not anger, not bitterness, something different, something that felt almost like clarity. I realized that I had made my entire identity about being Daniel's mother. For 30 years, that's all I was. I had no hobbies, no friends really, no life outside of him. I had poured everything I had into raising him, loving him, supporting him. And when he grew up and didn't need me anymore, I didn't know who I was. That's exactly the problem, Rebecca said, her voice rising. You see yourself as any grandmother. But Daniel already has a mother-in-law. My mother. And she doesn't push boundaries like you do. The words hit me like a slap. Mother-in-law. That's all I was to her. Not family. Not someone who loved Daniel and Emma. Just an inconvenient mother-in-law who needed to be managed. Daniel, I said, turning to my son. Do you feel this way too? He looked down at his hands. Mom, I love you. You know I do. But Rebecca is right about some things. You do call a lot. And sometimes your suggestions feel like criticism. I call once a week, I said. Once a week to talk to my son. Is that too much? It's not just the calls, Rebecca said. It's everything. It's the way you look at me when you come over, like you're judging everything I do. It's the way you talk about when Daniel was young all the time, like you're the only one who knows him. It's the way you act like you have some special claim on him that I don't have. I stared at her, stunned. I do have a special claim on him. I'm his mother. And I'm his wife, she shot back. And in a marriage, the wife comes first. Not the mother. Those words. That moment. That's when I understood what was really happening. This wasn't about boundaries or pushiness or suggestions. This was about power. About control. About Rebecca needing Daniel to choose her over me. And he had. I looked at Daniel, waiting for him to say something. To defend me. To tell Rebecca that there was room in his life for both of us. But he just sat there, silent, caught between his mother and his wife, and choosing his silence. You've been in our lives long enough, Mom, Rebecca said then, her voice softer but somehow more final. It's time you step back now. Give us space to be our own family. I was being erased. Pushed out. Made invisible. And my son, my beautiful son who I had given everything to, was letting it happen. That's when I made a decision. I called Daniel and asked if I could come over to talk. Not to see Emma. Just to talk to him and Rebecca together. He sounded surprised but agreed. I drove to their house on that Tuesday afternoon in late autumn. The same afternoon I mentioned at the beginning of my story. The leaves were falling and my heart was heavy, but I was determined to speak my truth. Rebecca let me in. Daniel was there too, sitting on the couch, looking nervous. I sat across from them and took a deep breath. I need to say something, I began. And I need you both to listen. They nodded, Rebecca's arms crossed, Daniel fidgeting with his hands. For the past 2 years, I have felt like I'm being pushed out of your lives. Out of Daniel's life. Out of Emma's life. And I need to know why. Margaret, Rebecca started, but I held up my hand. Please. Let me finish. She pressed her lips together, but stayed quiet. I understand that I'm not your mother, Rebecca. I understand that you have your own parents, your own family. But Daniel is my son. My only child. The boy I raised alone. The man I sacrificed everything for. And Emma is my granddaughter. My only grandchild. My voice started to shake, but I continued. I'm not asking to take over your lives. I'm not asking to be there every day or to make decisions for you. I'm just asking to be included. To be part of this family. Because that's what I am. Family. You are pushy though, Rebecca said suddenly, her voice sharp. You call constantly. You show up with gifts all the time. You try to tell me how to raise my daughter. You make comments about what I feed her, how I dress her, when she should sleep. I blinked in surprise. I've never tried to tell you how to raise Emma. I've only offered suggestions like any grandmother would. Meanwhile, I saw photos on social media of Rebecca's parents visiting all the time. Holding Emma. Playing with her. Being a real part of her life. I tried to talk to Daniel about it. He would just say, "Mom, Rebecca is stressed. Being a new mother is hard. We need to respect her wishes." What about my wishes? I wanted to scream. What about my feelings? But I didn't. Because that's not what good mothers do. Good mothers stay quiet. Good mothers don't make waves. Then came Emma's first birthday. I had been planning for months what I would do, how I would celebrate my granddaughter's first year of life. I bought her a beautiful dress, toys, books. I baked a special cake. 2 weeks before the party, I called Daniel to ask what time I should arrive. "About the party, Mom," he said, his voice strained. "Rebecca thinks it might be better if we keep it small this year. Just her family." I couldn't speak for a moment. Just her family. As if I wasn't family. "I'm her grandmother," I said quietly. "I know, Mom. But Rebecca's parents are hosting it at their house, and they have limited space, and—" "Daniel," I interrupted. "She's my granddaughter. Your daughter. How can you exclude me from her birthday?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Rebecca feels like you're too pushy sometimes. That you don't respect boundaries. She thinks some distance might be good for everyone." Too pushy. For wanting to see my own granddaughter. For wanting to be part of my family. "I see," I said. My voice sounded hollow, even to myself. "I'm sorry, Mom. I really am. But I have to support my wife. You understand, don't you?" I hung up without answering. I sat in my quiet house, holding the birthday cake I had baked, the presents I had wrapped, and I finally let myself feel the full weight of what was happening. I knocked on the door, my heart racing. Rebecca answered. She looked tired but composed, her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. "Margaret," she said. "Not Mom. Not anymore. Just Margaret." "Hi, sweetheart," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "I brought some things for Emma." She let me in, but I could feel the coldness radiating from her. Daniel was in the living room, holding Emma. My breath caught when I saw them together. He looked like such a father, so natural, so loving. "Mom," he said, smiling. "Come meet your granddaughter." I walked over, my hands trembling. He placed Emma in my arms, and the world stopped. She was so tiny, so warm, so perfect. Tears streamed down my face as I looked at her, this little miracle, this piece of my son, this new generation of our family. "Hello, sweet girl," I whispered. "I'm your grandmother. I've been waiting so long to meet you." For those few minutes, everything was perfect. I was holding my granddaughter. My family was together. This was all I had ever wanted. But then Rebecca spoke. Her voice cut through the moment like ice. "Daniel, I think Emma needs to eat." "Margaret, maybe it's time you headed home." I had been there for maybe 15 minutes. "Oh," I said, trying to hide my disappointment. "Of course. I don't want to intrude." I handed Emma back to Daniel, kissed her soft forehead, and gathered my things. As I walked to the door, I heard Rebecca say something to Daniel in a low voice. I couldn't make out all the words, but I heard boundaries and space. I drove home in silence, tears blurring my vision. I had waited 6 weeks to meet my granddaughter, and I got 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Over the next few months, the pattern continued. I would ask to visit Emma, and there was always a reason why I couldn't. She was napping. They were busy. Rebecca's mother was there. They had plans. I was allowed to visit maybe once every 3 or 4 weeks, always for short periods, always under Rebecca's watchful. It was about 6 months later when things really came to a head. Rebecca was pregnant. They announced it at a dinner at her parents' house. I wasn't invited to that dinner either, but Daniel called to tell me afterward. I was overjoyed. A grandchild. My first grandchild. I cried happy tears on the phone, telling Daniel how proud I was, how excited I was. "Can I come over soon?" I asked. "Maybe I could help Rebecca with anything she needs. I could cook meals for you both, help set up the nursery." "That's really nice, Mom," Daniel said. But Rebecca's mom is already helping with all that. She's taken time off work to be here for Rebecca. Of course. Rebecca's mom. Always Rebecca's mom. I tried not to let it bother me. I bought baby clothes, tiny outfits in soft yellows and greens since they weren't finding out the gender. I bought books and toys and blankets. I wanted to be involved, even if it was only from a distance. The baby was born on a rainy April morning. A beautiful little girl named Emma. Daniel sent me a photo from the hospital. She was perfect. Absolutely perfect. I stared at that photo for hours, at her tiny fingers and button nose, at the way she had Daniel's eyes. When can I meet her? I texted back. Soon, Mom. Rebecca needs to rest first. Soon turned into a week. Then 2 weeks. Then a month. Every time I asked, there was a reason I couldn't visit. Rebecca was too tired. The baby was fussy. They needed time to adjust. Rebecca's mother was staying with them to help. I tried to be patient. I tried to be understanding. But my heart was breaking. I had a grandchild, a beautiful granddaughter, and I hadn't even held her yet. Finally, after 6 weeks, Daniel agreed I could visit. Just for an hour, he said. Rebecca wasn't feeling well, so I needed to keep it short. Later rarely came. I tried to talk to him about it once. I called and asked if we could have lunch, just the two of us. He hesitated, then agreed. We met at a small cafe near his office. He looked different somehow. Older. More tired. Or maybe more distant. Daniel, I said gently, stirring my coffee. Is everything okay? I feel like we don't talk as much anymore. He looked uncomfortable. Everything's fine, Mom. I'm just busy. You know how it is. I miss you, I said simply. I miss our Sunday calls. I miss having you over for dinner. He sighed. Mom, I'm married now. I have a wife. I have responsibilities. I can't always be available like I used to be. I'm not asking you to be available all the time, I said. I'm just asking to be part of your life. You are part of my life, he said, but his eyes didn't meet mine. That's when I knew. Something had fundamentally changed. And I didn't know how to fix it. He called the next day, Friday afternoon. Hey Mom, happy Thanksgiving. Sorry I didn't call yesterday. It was just crazy with everything. That's okay. Did you have a nice time? Yeah, it was great. Rebecca's mom made this amazing turkey. And her dad has this huge house with a pool and everything. We played football in the backyard. It was really fun. He sounded happy. Genuinely happy. And I was glad for that. I really was. But it hurt to know that he was having fun without me, that he had barely thought about me at all. What did you do? He asked, almost as an afterthought. Oh, I had a quiet day. Just relaxed. It was nice. I didn't tell him about the Chinese food. I didn't tell him about crying myself to sleep. I didn't tell him that I had never felt more alone in my entire life. The pattern continued. Christmas came and Rebecca's family hosted a big party. Daniel invited me, but when I arrived, I felt completely out of place. Rebecca's family was wealthy. Their house was enormous, decorated like something out of a magazine. There were probably 50 people there, all dressed in expensive clothes, drinking expensive wine, talking about their vacation homes and their boats and their investments. I stood in the corner holding a glass of cheap wine someone had handed me, watching Daniel laughing with Rebecca's father, watching Rebecca showing off her engagement ring to her cousins. Nobody talked to me. Nobody asked who I was. I might as well have been invisible. I left after an hour. Daniel was so busy he didn't even notice me leave. Easter came and went the same way. Mother's Day was particularly painful. I had always loved Mother's Day. Daniel would make me breakfast in bed, bring me flowers, take me out to lunch. It was the one day of the year that was just about me, about celebrating my role as his mother. But this year, Daniel called me in the morning. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. Rebecca and I are taking her mom out to brunch. That's the thing, Mom. Rebecca's family wants us to come to their place this year. Her parents really want to host. And you know, we've been to your place the last 2 years, so it's only fair we alternate. I stopped writing. My pen hovered over the paper. Alternate, I repeated. Yeah, you know. 1 year with your family, 1 year with hers. That's what married couples do, right? What married couples do. As if I was just one option among many, not the woman who had single-handedly raised him, who had given up everything for him, who had made Thanksgiving special for him every single year of his life. I suppose that makes sense, I said slowly. Maybe I could join you at Rebecca's parents' house? I'd love to meet them properly. We only talked briefly at the wedding. There was a long pause. Too long. It's really just a family thing, Mom. You understand, right? Rebecca's parents are kind of traditional about these things. They like to keep it to immediate family. Family thing. Immediate family. As if I wasn't his family. As if the woman who gave birth to him, who raised him alone, who sacrificed everything for him, wasn't immediate family. Right, I said. My hand was shaking. Of course. You have a wonderful time. Are you okay, Mom? You sound upset. I'm fine, Daniel. I understand. Really. Have fun with Rebecca's family. Maybe we can get together the day after? We could come over for leftovers or something. Sure, I said. That would be nice. We both knew it wouldn't happen. And it didn't. I spent that Thanksgiving alone. I didn't cook. What was the point of preparing a feast for one person? I ordered Chinese food and ate it straight from the containers while watching television. The house felt huge and empty and cold. I kept thinking about Daniel, about whether he was having a good time, about whether he was thinking of me at all. I'm glad you had a good birthday, I said. Thanks, Mom. Love you. Love you too. After we hung up, I took his cake out of the freezer. I stared at it for a long time. Then I threw it away. I couldn't bear to look at it anymore. A few weeks later came Thanksgiving. I had always hosted Thanksgiving. It was our tradition, even more sacred than birthdays. For all those years when it was just Daniel and me, Thanksgiving was our day. I would cook for 2 days straight, preparing all his favorite dishes. Turkey with herb stuffing. Mashed potatoes with extra butter. Sweet potato casserole with marshmallows on top. Green bean casserole. Cranberry sauce from scratch. Rolls that I made by hand. And my grandmother's pumpkin pie, the recipe that had been passed down for 3 generations. Daniel and I would spend the day together. We would watch the parade on television while the turkey cooked. We would set the table together. We would eat until we were stuffed, and then we would sit on the couch, too full to move, and watch old movies. It was my favorite day of the year. After Rebecca came into the picture, she joined us for Thanksgiving. She was polite about it. She complimented the food. She helped clear the table. But I noticed she didn't eat much. She pushed food around her plate and took small bites and left most of it untouched. She said she was watching her figure, that she had a big work event coming up and wanted to fit into a certain dress. But this year, 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, Daniel called me. He sounded uncomfortable, like he was about to tell me something he knew I wouldn't want to hear. Mom, about Thanksgiving, he started. I was in my kitchen making a shopping list, planning out what I needed to buy for the meal. Yes, honey? What time do you want to come over? I was thinking we could eat around 3, like we usually do. There was a pause. I could hear Rebecca breathing on the other end of the line. Actually, Margaret, my mom already ordered a cake from Delacroix. You know, that fancy French bakery? They do these incredible custom designs. She ordered it weeks ago. But thank you anyway. That was sweet of you. Sweet of me. As if baking my son's birthday cake for 28 consecutive years was just a sweet gesture, something optional, something that could be easily replaced by a store-bought cake from a fancy bakery. Right, I said. My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. Well, tell Daniel I called. Tell him I said happy birthday. Of course. Have a good day, Margaret. She hung up. I stood there holding the phone for a long moment, staring at the chocolate cake sitting on my counter. It had his name written in blue icing, his favorite color. 29 candles waiting to be lit. I had spent 3 hours baking and decorating it. I wrapped it carefully and put it in the freezer. I told myself it was fine. They wanted to celebrate with her family. That was normal. That was healthy. Married couples should spend time with both families. It was only fair. But it hurt. It hurt more than I wanted to admit. Daniel called me the next evening, a full day after his birthday. "Hey Mom," he said. "Sorry I didn't call yesterday. It was crazy with dinner and everything." "That's okay, sweetheart," I said. "Did you have a nice time?" "Yeah, it was good. The restaurant was amazing. Rebecca's parents got us this really nice bottle of wine. And the cake her mom ordered was incredible. For layers with this chocolate ganache and raspberry filling." He kept talking about the cake. About how delicious it was. About how everyone had raved about it. He didn't mention my cake. He didn't ask if I had baked one. It was like our 28-year tradition had simply evaporated, been replaced by something newer and fancier and better. But then small things started to happen. Small things that felt like tiny cuts, barely noticeable at first, but they accumulated over time until I was bleeding from 1,000 wounds. Daniel's birthday was the first real sign that something had changed. For 28 years, I had celebrated his birthday the same way. I baked him a chocolate cake from scratch, his favorite since he was 5 years old. I invited him over for dinner. We would eat his favorite meal, whatever he requested, and then I would bring out the cake with candles blazing. He would make a wish and blow them out, and we would laugh and talk and celebrate another year of his life. It was our tradition. Just the two of us for most of his life. After he met Rebecca, it became the three of us, which was fine. I was happy to include her in our tradition. But this year, when I called to confirm what time they would be coming over for his birthday dinner, Rebecca answered the phone. "Oh, Margaret," she said. Her voice was sweet, but there was something sharp underneath it, like honey poured over broken glass. "We're actually having dinner with my parents this year. They've already made reservations at Chez Laurent, that new French restaurant downtown. You know, the one that's impossible to get into? But my dad knows the owner." I stood in my kitchen, holding the phone, trying to process what she was saying. "Oh," I managed. "I didn't realize. Daniel didn't mention it. It was kind of last minute," Rebecca said. "My parents really wanted to take us out somewhere nice. You understand." "Of course," I said automatically. "That's very generous of them. Maybe I could drop off his cake beforehand? I've already baked it." The first year of their marriage seemed fine on the surface. Daniel and Rebecca moved into a nice apartment downtown, about 30 minutes from my house. It was a modern building with a doorman and a gym and all the things young, successful couples want. I visited once, shortly after they moved in. Rebecca gave me a quick tour, showed me the granite countertops and the walk-in closet and the view from their balcony. Everything was pristine and perfectly decorated. It didn't feel like a home yet. It felt like a showroom. But I smiled and told them it was beautiful. I tried to respect their space. I didn't want to be that mother, the one who calls too much or shows up uninvited or can't let go. So I called Daniel once a week, usually on Sunday evenings, like we had done when he was in college. Sometimes he answered and we talked for 20 or 30 minutes. Sometimes he was busy and said he would call me back later. Sometimes Rebecca answered his phone and said he was in the shower or on another call or just stepping out. When Daniel did call back, our conversations felt different somehow. Shorter. More distracted. He would tell me about work, about projects he was managing, about promotions he was hoping for. But when I asked about his personal life, about how married life was treating him, about what he and Rebecca did on weekends, his answers were vague. "Good. Fine. We've been busy." I invited them for dinner once a month. I would plan the menu carefully, cook all of Daniel's favorite foods, set the table nicely. Sometimes they came. Sometimes they canceled at the last minute. Work emergency. Rebecca wasn't feeling well. They had forgotten about another commitment. I understood. They were young and busy and building their careers. I didn't complain. I just saved the leftovers and ate them alone throughout the week. I offered to contribute financially. I had some savings, money I had been putting aside for years. I gave them $10,000. It was most of what I had, but I wanted to help. I wanted to be part of this important moment in Daniel's life. Rebecca thanked me politely. She said it would help with the catering costs. I later saw on social media that they had spent twice that much just on flowers. The wedding was beautiful, elegant, expensive. Everything was perfect, from the venue to the decorations to Rebecca's designer dress. I wore a simple blue dress I had bought on sale. I felt out of place among Rebecca's family and friends in their expensive clothes and jewelry. During the reception, I barely saw Daniel. He was busy greeting guests, taking photos, dancing with Rebecca. I sat at my assigned table with some distant relatives I barely knew. Rebecca's parents were at the head table with the bride and groom. I understood. It was traditional. But it hurt anyway. I did get one dance with Daniel. A short dance to a slow song. He held my hand and thanked me for everything. For raising him, for supporting him, for loving him. I held him tight and told him I was proud of him. I told him I loved him. I told him I hoped he and Rebecca would be very happy together. "We will be, Mom," he said. "And you'll always be part of our lives. Always." I wanted to believe him. I really, really wanted to believe him. Daniel laughed at these stories, his eyes warm with nostalgia. But Rebecca just smiled politely. There was something in her expression I couldn't quite read. Something that made me feel like I was saying the wrong things, sharing too much, being too familiar. After dinner, they stayed for an hour. Rebecca checked her phone several times. Finally, she said they needed to leave, that she had an early meeting the next morning. They thanked me for dinner and left. I stood at the door watching them drive away, and that small voice in the back of my mind whispered a little louder. Something wasn't right. But I pushed the thought away. I told myself I was being silly, overprotective, reading too much into nothing. Daniel called me the next day. He said Rebecca really liked me, that dinner was great, that everything had gone well. I wanted to believe him. I chose to believe him. They dated for 2 more years. I saw them maybe once a month, sometimes less. Always at my house. Rebecca never invited me to their apartment. When I suggested coming over to cook them dinner there, Rebecca would say the place was too small or too messy or they were too busy. When Daniel proposed, he called to tell me before anyone else. I cried on the phone. Happy tears, I told him. And they were happy tears mostly. But there was something else mixed in. A sadness I couldn't quite name. A fear that I was losing him, that once he was married, I would become less important, less necessary. "You'll always be my mom," Daniel said, as if reading my mind. "That will never change." I wanted to believe him. I really did. The wedding planning began immediately. Rebecca was very involved, very particular about every detail. She had a vision, she said. She knew exactly what she wanted. I offered to help, asked if there was anything I could do. She gave me small tasks. Addressing invitations. Making phone calls to confirm RSVPs. Nothing important. I was excited to meet her. I wanted to meet the woman who had captured my son's heart. I wanted to welcome her into our little family. Daniel brought her to dinner on a Saturday evening in June. I spent the entire day preparing. I cleaned the house until it sparkled. I cooked my special lasagna, the one Daniel always requested for his birthday. I set the table with my good dishes, the ones I had gotten as wedding gifts 30 years ago and almost never used. I bought flowers for the centerpiece. I wanted everything to be perfect. Rebecca arrived wearing a designer dress and expensive shoes. She was beautiful, just like Daniel had said. Tall and elegant with perfect hair and makeup. She smiled when she met me, shook my hand politely, complimented the house. We sat down for dinner and I served the lasagna. I watched Rebecca take a small bite and chew slowly. She smiled and said it was delicious, but I noticed she didn't take much. She ate mostly the salad I had prepared as a side dish. During dinner, I asked her about herself. About her job, her family, her interests. She answered politely but briefly. She seemed more interested in talking about the new restaurant downtown that had gotten amazing reviews, about the vacation she and Daniel were planning to take to Europe, about the condo they were thinking of buying together. I told stories about Daniel as a child. About how he used to refuse to wear anything but his Superman costume for an entire year when he was 4. About how he once tried to cook me dinner when he was 8 and nearly burned down the kitchen. About his first day of high school when he was so nervous he threw up in the car. He got accepted to a good university with a partial scholarship. The rest we paid for with his savings from his job, my college fund, and student loans. It wasn't easy. There were many nights when I lay awake worrying about money, about whether we could afford another semester. But we made it work. We always made it work. During his college years, Daniel would call me every Sunday evening. We would talk for an hour, sometimes more. He told me about his classes and his friends and his dreams for the future. I told him about my week, though I left out the hard parts. I didn't tell him about the rude customer who yelled at me for getting his order wrong. I didn't tell him about the pain in my knees that was getting worse every year. I didn't tell him how lonely I was in that house by myself. I just listened to his voice and smiled and told him I was proud of him. Because I was. So incredibly proud. He graduated with a degree in accounting. Got a good job at a firm in the city. Started making real money, more money than I had ever made in my life. He wanted to help me then. Wanted to pay off my mortgage, wanted me to quit one of my jobs. But I told him no. I told him to save his money, to build his own life. I told him I was fine. And I was fine. As long as I had Daniel, as long as I knew he was happy and healthy and succeeding, I was fine. When he told me he had met someone, my heart jumped. I was happy for him. Truly I was. Every mother wants her son to find love, to find a partner, to build a family of his own. But there was also a tiny voice in the back of my mind whispering that everything was about to change. Her name was Rebecca. Daniel talked about her constantly. She was beautiful, he said. Smart. Ambitious. She worked in marketing for a tech company. She had gone to a prestigious university. She came from a good family. He was head over heels in love with her. Before you go, I want to ask you something. If you were in Margaret's position, what would you have done? Would you have stepped back quietly like she did? Or would you have fought harder to stay in your son's life? And what about Rebecca? Do you think she was justified in setting boundaries, or did she go too far? I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. Please share your opinion in the comments below. Tell me what you would do if you were Margaret. And also, let me know where you're listening to this story from. I love knowing that these stories reach people all around the world. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. It really helps this channel grow and reach more people who need to hear these stories. And if you're new here, welcome. This channel is all about real-life stories of family, love, heartbreak, and healing. Stories that remind us we're not alone in our struggles. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. There are many more waiting for you. Stories about mothers and daughters, husbands and wives, forgiveness and second chances. Thank you so much for listening today. Until next time, take care of yourself and the people you love. This is Voices of Eliza, and I'll see you in the next story. The day my daughter-in-law took everything from me turned out to be the day I started finding myself again. It was the day I learned that you can lose everything you thought defined you and still survive. Still thrive, even. It was the day I learned that sometimes, the worst thing that happens to us becomes the doorway to something better. Something truer. Something more real. And for that, as strange as it sounds, I'm grateful. Not for the pain, but for what the pain taught me. About love and loss. About identity and independence. About holding on and letting go. About endings that become beginnings. I'm grateful for the woman I've become. For the life I've built. For the relationships I've rebuilt. For the grandmother I get to be, not the one I imagined, but the real one, imperfect and present and enough. My name is Margaret. I'm 64 years old. I live on Maple Street. I paint and garden and volunteer and love. And I'm a grandmother to a beautiful little girl named Emma who thinks I hang the moon. That's my story. Not the story I wanted to tell, but the story that needed to be told. And if you're listening, if you see yourself in my words, But I also want you to know this. You are more than a mother. You are a complete person with your own worth and value. And sometimes, the greatest gift you can give your children is the space to build their own lives while you build yours. It doesn't mean you love them less. It doesn't mean you matter less. It just means you're all growing, changing, becoming more fully yourselves. And maybe, if you're lucky like I was, your family will realize what they're missing. They'll reach out. They'll make amends. They'll invite you back in. But even if they don't, you'll be okay. Because you'll have discovered what I discovered. That you can survive losing the identity you built your whole life around. That you can start over at 60, at 70, at any age. That it's never too late to figure out who you are beyond your roles and relationships. Today, I'm 64 years old. I have coffee with my friend Sarah every Tuesday. I volunteer at the community garden on Thursdays. I paint whenever inspiration strikes. And I see Emma every Sunday. Last week, she asked me to teach her how to paint. We sat in my backyard, brushes in hand, making a beautiful mess together. Rebecca and Daniel came to pick her up, and instead of rushing off, they stayed for dinner. We laughed and talked and shared stories. It's not perfect. There are still awkward moments. Still boundaries to navigate. Still old hurts that ache sometimes. But we're family. And we're trying. And for now, that's enough. And I am a grandmother. To a beautiful little girl named Emma who now calls me every Sunday evening to tell me about her week. Who saves her drawings for me. Who asks for my special pancakes when she visits. Who is learning that love comes in many forms and from many people, and there is always room for more. The day my daughter-in-law took everything from me, I thought my life was over. I thought I had lost my son, my granddaughter, my purpose for existing. But looking back now, I realized she didn't take everything. She couldn't. Because the love I have for Daniel, for Emma, for my family, that can't be taken. It might be tested. It might be strained. It might have to find new forms and new expressions. But it can't be taken. What was taken from me was something different. Something I actually needed to lose. The belief that I existed only for others. The idea that my worth came from how much I sacrificed. The notion that loving someone meant controlling them. Losing those things was painful. But in that pain, I found myself again. And in finding myself, I was able to build a healthier relationship with my family. One based not on need, but on genuine love and mutual respect. If you're a mother going through something similar, if you feel pushed aside or forgotten or excluded, I want you to know something. Your pain is real. Your feelings matter. You have every right to want to be part of your child's life, your grandchildren's lives. And we did. We played blocks for the rest of the afternoon. And when it was time for me to leave, Emma hugged me tight and asked when I could come back. Soon, I promised. Very soon. Things didn't become perfect overnight. Relationships don't heal that quickly. But we started building something new. Something healthier. I visited Emma every week, but I also made sure I had my own life, my own interests. Rebecca and I started having coffee sometimes, just the two of us, learning to know each other as people, not just as rivals for Daniel's attention. Daniel and I talked more, but I learned to listen more than I spoke. To ask questions instead of giving advice. To respect that he was an adult with his own family, and my role now was to support, not to direct. It wasn't the relationship I had imagined having with my son and granddaughter. But it was real. And in some ways, it was better than what I had imagined, because it was built on honesty and respect instead of obligation and guilt. I learned something through all of this. Something painful but necessary. Children grow up. Sons become husbands and fathers. And mothers have to learn to let go, not completely, but enough. Enough to let our children build their own lives. Enough to let them make their own choices. Enough to let them sometimes choose other people over us, and to understand that this doesn't mean they love us less. But I also learned that letting go doesn't mean disappearing. That boundaries are important, yes, but so is belonging. That families can change and evolve, but they're still families. Most of all, I learned that I am more than just Daniel's mother. I am Margaret. I am an artist and a gardener and a friend. I am a woman with value and worth that exists independent of my role as a parent. I should have said something sooner, Daniel added, stepping closer. I should have defended you. I should have made sure you knew you were still part of this family. I'm sorry too, Mom. For all of it. I looked at Emma, playing so innocently on the floor, unaware of the complicated adult emotions swirling around her. I'm sorry too, I said softly. I think I did hold on too tight. I think I was so afraid of losing Daniel that I couldn't see I was pushing him away. I made my whole life about being his mother, and that wasn't fair to anyone. Not to him, not to you, Rebecca. Not even to myself. We talked for hours that day. Really talked. About fears and expectations and hurt feelings. About boundaries and needs and what family really means. It wasn't easy. There were tears. There were hard truths spoken out loud. But we talked. And that was a start. Rebecca asked if I would like to spend more time with Emma. Real time, not just quick supervised visits. She said Emma had been asking about me, about the grandmother in the photos who sent her presents. I'd like that very much, I said, my voice breaking. Emma looked up from her blocks then, studying me with curious eyes. Are you my grandma? She asked. I knelt down next to her, careful of my aging knees. Yes, sweetheart. I'm your grandma. She smiled, gap-toothed and beautiful. Do you want to play blocks with me? I would love to, I said. It was 2 years after that terrible Tuesday afternoon when my phone rang. It was Daniel. Mom, he said, his voice strange. Can you come over? Please. My heart jumped, but I kept my voice calm. Is everything okay? Just please come, he said, and I heard something in his voice that I hadn't heard in a long time. He sounded like my son again. Like the boy who used to need me. I drove to their house, my mind racing with possibilities. When I arrived, Daniel answered the door. He looked older, tired, but there was something softer in his eyes. Come in, Mom, he said. Rebecca was in the living room with Emma, who was now 4 years old and absolutely beautiful. She was playing with blocks on the floor. Margaret, Rebecca said, standing up. She looked uncomfortable but determined. Thank you for coming. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. I owe you an apology, Rebecca said, and those words shocked me so much I nearly sat down. She took a deep breath. I was threatened by you. From the very beginning. Daniel talked about you constantly. How strong you were. How you raised him alone. How you sacrificed everything for him. And I felt like I could never measure up. Like I could never be as important to him as you were. I opened my mouth to speak, but she held up her hand, just like I had done to her 2 years ago. So I pushed you out. I made it hard for you to see Daniel. To see Emma. I told myself I was protecting my family, setting boundaries. But really, I was just being insecure and jealous. And I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. Tears welled up in my eyes. Not tears of sadness this time. Something else. Something that felt almost like relief.